It was raining heavily that morning, the kind of rain that soaked through clothes and carried the scent of the earth into the air, and Amelia's shoes splashed through puddles as she held her daughter tightly against her side while balancing a tray of freshly baked pastries in her other hand, her heart pounding with both exhaustion and determination, because she knew that today she could not afford to return home empty-handed. She had borrowed money for flour, sugar, and eggs from the kind old lady who lived 2 doors down, promising she would return it with interest once she managed to sell at least a dozen pastries, and now here she was, standing at the gates of the wealthiest estate in town, rain dripping down her hair, her t-shirt clinging to her skin, her little girl clutching her shoulder with small frightened fingers, not understanding why her mother was out in the storm, only knowing that mommy had said they needed to be brave, that they needed to try, because if they didn't sell something today, there might be no food tomorrow, no roof by the end of the month, and no hope for the future. So Amelia swallowed her pride and pressed the golden doorbell, the sound echoing like thunder inside the massive mansion beyond the glass doors, and for a moment she thought no one would answer, until the heavy door opened slowly and a tall man in a perfectly tailored suit appeared, his hair neatly combed back, his face handsome but stern, his posture commanding like someone who had long grown used to being obeyed, and Amelia felt a shiver run down her spine that had nothing to do with the cold rain, because this was him, the man she had heard about in hushed whispers at the bakery and in the market stalls, the reclusive millionaire who owned half the businesses in town, the one nobody dared approach, the one whose decisions could build or destroy entire livelihoods with a single signature, and yet here she was, drenched, shivering, and holding out her tray of pastries. Like a desperate beggar, her voice trembling as she forced herself to speak, "Can I sell you a pastry, sir?" And for a long moment the man did not answer, his piercing eyes studying her in silence, and she thought she saw the faintest flicker of surprise, perhaps even recognition, as if her presence stirred something buried deep within him. But then his gaze shifted to the little girl in her arms, the child with golden curls and wide innocent eyes who was now hiding her face in her mother's neck, and something softened in his expression, something almost human breaking through the hard exterior of the powerful man he was known to be, and when he finally spoke, his voice was deep, steady, but not cold as she had expected. Instead it carried a note of curiosity. "You came here in the rain to sell me pastries," and Amelia, embarrassed, lowered her eyes and nodded quickly, her wet hair clinging to her cheeks as she said, "I'm sorry, sir, I know it's not proper, but I didn't know where else to go. I baked them fresh this morning. I just need to sell a few so I can buy milk for my daughter, please, just one, they're only $2 each," and she held the tray closer, the pastries smelling sweet despite the rain, and for a moment silence hung heavy between them until the man suddenly stepped aside, gesturing for her to come in. "You shouldn't be standing out there in the storm, come inside." And Amelia hesitated, because stepping into the mansion felt like stepping into another world, one she did not belong to, but the warmth spilling from the doorway was too tempting. Her daughter shivered against her, and so she nodded gratefully, whispering "thank you," as she carefully crossed the threshold, her worn sneakers dripping onto the pristine marble floor, the contrast almost painful to her pride, because she felt like an intruder in a palace, her jeans torn at the knee, her shirt damp and clinging, her tray shaking slightly as she tried to stand straight. But the man did not scold her, he only closed the door behind her and called for someone, his voice echoing through the grand hall, and within moments a maid appeared, shocked to see the poor woman and child dripping rainwater onto the luxurious carpet. But the man dismissed the maid with a wave and instead turned back to Amelia, his eyes lingering on her tired face, the dark circles beneath her eyes, the way she seemed ready to collapse from exhaustion, and then he asked, "What's your name?" And she answered softly, "Amelia, sir, and this is my daughter, Lily," the little girl lifting her face shyly to glance at the man, who gave her the faintest smile before looking back at Amelia, his voice quiet but firm as he said words that would change her life forever. "You're not just going to sell me a pastry, Amelia, you're going to live with me." And Amelia's breath caught, her tray almost slipping from her hands as she stared at him in shock, sure she had misheard, because who says something like that? What kind of man makes such an outrageous statement? And yet his expression was unreadable, serious, as though he were offering the most natural thing in the world, and Amelia stammered, I don't understand, sir, I only came to sell." But he raised a hand to stop her, his eyes unwavering. "I don't want to buy your pastries, Amelia, I want to help you. You and your daughter don't belong out there in the rain, struggling to survive day by day. You need a safe place, and I have more rooms in this house than I can ever use, so you're going to live here, starting today." And Amelia's heart pounded with fear and confusion, because though his words sounded kind, they also sounded impossible, unbelievable, even dangerous. How could a powerful millionaire invite a stranger and her child to live in his home? What did he really want from them? And yet when she looked into his eyes, she did not see lust or cruelty. She saw something else, something wounded and lonely. As if he had been waiting a long time for someone to step into his empty world, and though every instinct screamed caution, a small voice inside her whispered that maybe, just maybe, this was fate knocking at her door. And as the rain continued to pour outside, Amelia realized her life had just crossed into a chapter she could never have imagined, one that would test her strength, her trust, and her heart in ways she had never known before. And yet for the first time in years, she felt a spark of hope that tomorrow might not be as dark as yesterday, that maybe, just maybe, she and Lily were about to find a new beginning in the most unexpected place of all. And as the tray of pastries grew heavy in her trembling hands, she dared to whisper, "Are you sure, sir?" And the millionaire gave her a look that silenced all doubts, replying with quiet certainty, "More sure than anything else in my life."